Um, there are several main components of the car. As you can see here, we got the chassis. We also have the shell, the front suspension assemblies right over here, and also we got the rear suspension assembly along with the motor attached to it. And then of course there's other miscellaneous components such as the seat and the steering wheel. We also got the brake systems. And now let's go a little bit more in detail between the individual components. About the chassis. You can see here we have a chassis made of aluminum tubes, and they're welded to form this shape, just a bunch of aluminum cut tubes. You can see that almost all the components are actually attached onto the chassis because it's actually the structural component of the whole car. You can see that the suspensions are mounted here. The rear suspension are also mounted on the back of the chassis. And the shell, the bottom belly pan, is mounted on the chassis on 4 different points. Another main feature is the what's called a roll cage. And this is what protects the driver from injuries in the event of an accident, especially if the car somehow flips over. You can also see that the harness points are also on the roll cage. Next we'll look at the rear suspension. It's actually very simple compared to what we have in the front. The main structure is just this piece called the trailing arm. And the trailing arm is what the wheel and the motor is attached to. And you can see also it's attached to the back of the chassis, and it pivots at this point, and the whole suspension moves up and down while supported by the shocks right here. Next we got the front suspension, and you can see that the front suspension is much more complicated than we have in the back. Here we got the suspension design called the double A-arm design. It's also called the double wishbone suspension design. The reason why it's called the double A-arm is because we got the top and the lower support arms, and they're shaped like the letter A. There's also this vertical piece called the kingpin, and this is what houses the wheel, the brake rotors, and also it's connected to the A-arm themselves. You can see that the A-arms actually attaches the kingpin assembly onto the chassis. And how this works is that the A-arms pivot up and down, parallel to each other, and with that motion the kingpin can travel up and down relative to the chassis. So next let's talk about the steering system on our car. We have a pretty conventional steering system, and how it works is that we have this thing right here. It's called a rack and pinion, and what this does is it changes the rotational motion of the steering wheel into a horizontal motion of this steering linkage right here. And you can see that it actually attaches to the kingpin and rotates the kingpin and the wheel on its vertical axis. And finally, let's go over the brakes. If you want to stop or slow down the car, you just press on the brake pedals, just like your everyday car, real car. And what it does is that it pushes liquid brake fluid from the master cylinders here into the brake calipers down here. And it also compresses the brake pads, and it squeezes the brake rotor to stop the car. You can see that we actually have 2 master cylinders. We also got 2 brake calipers on each side. And this is for safety reasons. We absolutely do not want the brake system to fail. So that if any part of the brake system fails, we have another set to back it up.